What if true financial security had less to do with how much you earn and everything to do with how you think? Whether you've received a windfall or you're growing a business at lightning speed, this conversation will help you align your wealth with your values, your vision, and your inner peace. Welcome to Happiness on Tap, where we bring you inspiring stories and practical insights for a happier, more fulfilling life. Your go-to podcast for uplifting conversations that stir the heart and ignite the spirit. I'm your host, Leann, and today we have a very special guest, Leisa Peterson. Leisa is a financial strategist, money mindset coach, and sudden wealth specialist who knows that wealth isn't just about numbers. It's about navigating identity shifts, emotional triggers, and relationship dynamics that come with money, especially when it arrives suddenly or grows rapidly. After spending years in the traditional world of financial advising, Leisa founded WealthClinic to fill in what was missing: a clear and compassionate roadmap to financial success that includes behavior, mindset, and long-term legacy view. She is the author of The Mindful Millionaire and The Money Catalyst, host of the Mindful Millionaire podcast, and a frequent voice of wisdom featured in Forbes, Fast Company. Her work helps entrepreneurs and inheritors alike confidently steward their wealth without losing themselves along the way. Leisa, welcome to the show. I am so excited for this conversation.
I'm so happy to be here.
I like that we both have this money background, me and my 20 years of accounting. And so I'm so looking forward to hear about how you work with people on their values and their mindset, because those are some difficult paths. And in relationships, sometimes we really struggle with those conversations with our partners. So you've worked with people on both ends, those building wealth from scratch and those inheriting it suddenly. What's the most surprising mindset blocks that they both share?
It's pretty amazing to me because consistently after 30 years of working with people and money, I'd say both groups struggle with the same core belief, which is some subset of I don't deserve this. And it's funny because I personally am not sure that I've ever struggled with that. I noticed that like my family doesn't. It might be because I don't like I didn't struggle with it, so I haven't passed that on to them. But it is very, very common. And it's one of the reasons why I think people have a hard time holding on to money.
Yeah, I've seen people, and I came from a very budgeted lifestyle where I accounted for every penny, I planned, I saved, and then ended up at the end of my 20-year marriage having to file bankruptcy because with my ex-husband getting injured and ending up not able to work, I had cashed in all of my 401ks from previous employers, and ended up having to file bankruptcy. And for me, that was such a hit. Like I felt like I had failed everything that I had worked so hard for. And then I lost my house, I lost my car. I mean, just everything all at one time. My marriage ended. I had no home, no car, and I was starting over. So those money mindsets were really difficult, to not be, pinching every penny or really hyper focused. And then I have other friends that are like, you can't take it with you. Enjoy life, just do what you want to do.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm curious too. tied into not deserving it would be like the guilt that a lot of women feel like no matter where they're at, there's this sense of like, wanting others to be in just as good of a position as they are. So it's like, I want to bring everyone with me, which is a totally beautiful idea. And yet it doesn't work that way. Like we really have to put the oxygen mask on ourselves and, allowing the guilt to affect that relationship. And I can only imagine even, I mean, a lot of people have had financial trauma in the past. And then that even compounds to give even more sense of guilt, like, oh, should I have done something different than what I did? And it makes it hard. It makes it a hard relationship to navigate because there's layer upon layer of stories kind of inside of this experience that we have with money. And as you can imagine, I mean, money is energy. Like it isn't, we're not meant to be carrying all of that on our shoulders. And no wonder it affects what happens with money.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. Can you walk us through your gap analysis and how it helps someone go from chaos to clarity in their financial life? And I'm very familiar with that term from my previous life, but I'd love to know more
Yeah.
about what you do.
Yeah. So it's funny because coming from that traditional world, a gap analysis would be like, okay, where are you financially? And I do help my clients with this. Where are you now? Where do you need to be in the future? How are we going to help you get there? So that's a traditional gap analysis. But what I also do, which I'm sure resonates with what you do in your life coaching business, is it's not just the money, it's also where are your beliefs right now around money and where do you want them to be? Or sometimes people don't even know because it's like the hand so close to our face, all we know is what we've experienced in the past. And so they're looking to me to help them understand like what would be a healthy belief system that I would need to have to set myself up so that I can go back to the financial stuff and focus on it positively rather than in these negative spirals that I get into. So the gap analysis is both the inner journey and like what's going on with your beliefs and where do you want your beliefs to be, as well as the financial reality of where you're wanting to go and what's amiss at that point in time.
Yeah. And that is something that I work with my clients that way as well. And we look at a lot of different layers, just like you're saying. There's always so many layers from what we've inherited, our beliefs, our thoughts, even our identity, and our relationship with money. And sometimes we have to unpack where those beliefs came from. And is this really your belief, or is this one that you inherited from maybe watching your parents struggle with money or your grandparents struggle with money? And they were a completely different generation and life was very different. My grandparents raised 13 kids on a farm and they grew their own food and raised their own meat. And so their relationship with money wasn't focused on sending their kids off to college. It was making sure everybody had food to eat and clothes to wear. And, so we inherit some of those different beliefs and thoughts and identity. And then, working with people more towards their future, like what are their future goals? Do they want to leave a legacy? Do they want to leave money for their children? And so yeah, there's so many different levels that we work through, and looking at also their spending, like what are their habits, and where do those habits come from? Are they uh, things that you're doing to avoid other things like shopping excursions when you're stressed out? Are you buying things that are unnecessary? Can you change those habits to a more positive choices so that we make sure you achieve your goals? So it's a lot of layers for sure.
Yeah. And I don't work as a traditional advisor anymore, but I bump up against, I was a certified financial planner. I have that designation, and I still can't help but want to empower people to have better tools that aren't owned by the financial advisor, but owned and controlled by the person, so that they have more sovereignty over what's going on, and they understand, like, oh, I want to have a tool at my disposal so I can make better decisions about, should I buy this? Should I invest in this? How is this going to affect my long-term plan? And I just felt like that wasn't, financial advising is set up specifically for like those assets that you put in the stock market or in the bond market, but they're not looking at like the whole person and
Mhm.
all the things that we get involved in, between home ownership, and we invest in real estate, and people have lots of different ways that they might, invest, including side businesses these days. And the tools that used to be used don't help people understand what their picture looks like in the same way that an advisor would. And so it's cool because the AI has brought all these great tools that I love introducing people to, that once they're set up, it's like they own that. And again, that's really important, I feel like, with our managing our money, to know what's going on, and have the ability to understand how to use those tools.
Mhm. And I think as a coach, both of us come from the same perspective, that we want to empower our clients so they're not dependent on us. So we want to provide them the tools that they need to make choices for their future, and help them see their future maybe in a direction that they weren't seeing it. But the whole purpose is to really empower them to move forward in their life without being dependent on us to do that.
Yes, definitely.
So, what are some common emotional or identity shifts um, people experience when they come into sudden wealth, either from a business exit, or divorce, or settlement, or inheritance?
Yeah, the identity shift is huge. It happens, I think, whether people expect it or not. And the first thing I see is what I'd call an identity whiplash. One day you're a person checking your bank account before you're buying groceries, and the next day you could buy your house and potentially many houses in cash. Your brain literally doesn't know how to categorize yourself anymore. I've worked with people who have inherited, I mean, sums of money that, their children, their grandchildren, their grandchildren's grandchildren probably couldn't spend in a lifetime. And being able to take ownership of money at that level is fascinating, because we're just not trained. Like, no matter how much money, I think it's very rare. That's why people hire other people to take care of it all. But what I found is it's very, very important, because you're going through this identity whiplash, to understand who you are better than maybe you've ever understood yourself before. Like, now is the time to really get to know yourself. And I always encourage people not to do anything with the money right away until they're able to like land the plane and feel really comfortable with it. Then you can start to make better decisions of like, who's going to help you with this? How are you going to do this? What are you going to set aside? How are you going to make better decisions if you have children? There's a book called Die with Zero. I had Bill Perkins, the author, on my podcast many years ago. And it's such a fascinating way of looking at money, different than the traditional, which is, what if we just set our children up for success early in life, rather than having them set up for waiting for a legacy at some point in the future? So it flips the whole story around. And it's not that you do that or you don't do it, but I think I owe it to my clients to take them down the journey of thinking about the scenarios of what could happen, that really sets, our family up for success, and so on. Another thing that I'll also mention is the relationships that we have with people when they know that we have inherited a lot of money. or even, I mean, a lot is relative, but it can change the dynamics of that. And so being able to be okay with it, know how to set boundaries in that relationship is an art, like a creative art that doesn't offend people, doesn't have people, expecting all kinds of handouts. But it's fascinating because it's a mindset game even more than the money.
Yeah. And I like how you have that focus, the relationship focus, because those things are going to really shift even within a family. You may have two siblings who both inherited the same sum of money, and one sibling, it goes off and just blows through it. And then all of a sudden they end up in a bad situation. And they expect the other sibling who has been cautious and saved and invested to then bail them out. And then you have this like weird family dynamic, like, well, you had the money and you blew it, and I'm invested. So it's not really my responsibility to bail you out or fix it. And there's just so many weird, family
So
dynamics that
much.
come up. And I know I had mentioned to you earlier, when I was able to take a year off for my mental health, I was able to do that because of an inheritance that my husband had received when his father passed away. And that really provided us the cushion for me not to have to stress about going back to work immediately when I couldn't even remember what I did the day before. And so it was such a blessing. But at the same time, like, I don't, I appreciate that gift. And, we don't spend it unwisely. We're very careful with that money. We'd like it to stretch as long as possible. But it definitely changed a little bit of things. But my husband was raised to be very frugal, just like his
Mhm.
father. And it was his father being frugal that gave him the ability to leave such a nice inheritance for both of his sons. So
Wow, that's
luckily we're
beautiful.
both those people. Neither of us are spenders. We don't spend unneedingly. We discuss our choices together and decide if it's the best thing for us, or do we really need to spend this money. And so we've done, the normal fix them up things in the house that now we won't have to worry about for the next 10-15 years, hopefully. New water heaters, washers, dryers, the things that set us up. But it's not like, oh, let's go take this lavish trip, or we just have we make different choices. But I love that people have the ability to come to you to really help kind of guide them and show them options and mindset choices and how things may shift in relationships and how to set boundaries. I mean, the fact that you can do all of that and not just be a financial advisor, I think is wonderful.
Thank you. I look at the whole person, right? And I didn't feel like the industry was looking at all the parts of what it means to be a complex human being.
Yeah. Just like medicine.
Yeah.
I do. And there's nothing, I think it's great to know that sometimes we need help and it's okay to ask for help, and to pay somebody who has that information, that education, that knowledge that we don't have. It takes courage to reach out and ask somebody for help and to hire somebody to help us make those decisions. But it's such an empowering thing that we can do for ourselves going forward, because at the same time we can learn so much that we didn't already know.
Well, and money is an unusual thing where there's no reason why, if you're hiring someone to help you make better decisions, that you won't exceed whatever you invest in getting help in the returns that you get, or the money that you keep, or the money that you don't spend because because the advice is hard won. Like, my husband and I have spent the past 30 years building wealth for ourselves so that we don't have to work anymore, so that we have absolute freedom to make choices about how we spend our time. That has been hard won. Like, we didn't come from money. Nobody gave this to us. We didn't receive any inheritances. I mean, it's beautiful when they happen, but like, we figured out how to make it. But the harder thing than making it was actually keeping it and figuring out, having not come from money, how to have our money make money for us so that we would be able to have those choices. So when I help people, it's not coming from like a textbook. It's coming because of the things that we've done for ourselves and the people that I've helped along the way. I mean, it wasn't actually even my job, but because my friend knew I was a certified financial planner, when she inherited a lot of money, she came to me because it was so overwhelming. And all the advisors were telling her different things that she didn't feel good about. And she was like, can you come in and help? And I was like, it's an honor to be able to do this. And I mean, yeah, I don't like people to waste money or waste time or get into situations that cause a great deal of stress. And all of that can happen with influxes of money.
Oh, absolutely. And I think now too, with scams, having somebody that she
Yes.
knew who would have her best interests at heart, versus hearing all these different suggestions from complete strangers who totally didn't know who were just looking at the dollar signs, either the dollar signs that were going into their pocket or how much money they had to work with, but they weren't looking at her and her future as a best interest like you are able to do for her. So I
Yeah.
definitely understand that. And I remember in my early days of accounting, I worked with payroll for a short period of time. And one of the girls ended up um, getting a judgment against her that then had to, of course, be taken out of her paycheck. And I knew that she was a single mom with 3 kids. And at that point in time, you're counting on every single penny. And then all of a sudden, there's this entity that's going to take a big chunk of that. Like, how am I going to put gas in my car? And how are you going to do this? And how are you going to do that? And when I received the judgment paperwork, I remembered that she was a person. It wasn't just put this thing into their payroll so it automatically withdraws. And so we sat down together and looked at, her 401k, how much money she was setting aside, and different choices that she could make that would make that impact just a little less painful. And
Mm,
that one conversation, that one time of making sure that she knew she was a person, that I knew that she was a person and that she needed help, created a friendship that has lasted 35 years. And she has never forgot that conversation. She's like, you didn't have
wow.
to do that. You could have just, put in the deduction and it would have just started coming out of my paycheck and I would have had to have figured it out. But you treated me like a person. And so that, is what drew me to wanting to help people, not just be the person that moves numbers around.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
was your breaking point or light bulb moment that made you shift?
Unfortunately, I had several back-to-back tragedies that occurred over a 14-year period, like kind of bookends, where it woke me up to the fact that I had made money more important than pretty much anything. Having come from very little, I thought that if you had money, then life was safe and joyful and everything. all your problems go away. Like I really did have a very childish thought because we didn't have money. I created beliefs that money means all of these things. And then when tragedy struck, I realized that I didn't have the resilience. I didn't have the skills in which to deal with the tragedy. And that meant that I needed to go within. I didn't even understand that at the time, but I was like, I began a journey 26 years ago now to figure out, who am I? How can I help myself better? How can I create greater happiness? And in the course of doing that work, I started to notice that my relationship with money, while it was pretty extreme, was actually not all that uncommon in the society that we live in, and that people have skewed ideas of putting money as being more important than many aspects of life. And that's what led me to start doing the research, leave my job as an advisor, start coaching, and writing books about this, because I could see that I had a different lens than anyone I had ever met, of bringing like the spiritual aspects of life and self-discovery together with money. And so when I brought those together, that created the Mindful Millionaire. And yeah, the rest is history.
I love that story. Thank you so much for sharing that, because that really is a powerful pivot when we are hit with the reality. I guess that's how mine was. It was a harsh reality that we really hadn't been taking care of our whole self. And
Mhm.
for me, and it sounds like for you as well, we didn't even know exactly how to do that. So,
No.
learning how to look inside, learning how to, face those beliefs and thoughts that we had had for so long, and actually question, like, where did this belief come from, and is this really my belief? And then just really doing the internal work and learning about ourselves is such an amazing journey, but it really has the power and the ability to change our perspective, our trajectory in life, like it did for you. I definitely want to know more about the Mindful Millionaire, because that sounds amazing. Um, Actually, let's go ahead and go there. Why don't you tell us more about the Mindful Millionaire?
Well, it was definitely inspired by all the years of working with people and their money. And I would say, like, realizing that the financial industry is obsessed with like products and performance, but nobody was addressing the fact that most people's financial problems aren't actually financial problems. They're emotional problems expressing themselves through money. And so the Mindful Millionaire was my attempt to explain what's going on under the surface of these relationships that we have. And the book is written in 3 parts. And side note, it gets me so excited. The book has become a perennial seller, which means it's selling just as well now as it did when it first came out in 2020. So whenever I go to Barnes and Noble, there's a copy at most Barnes and Noble. When I walk in, I'm so happy, right next to like the best-selling money books of all time, which just makes me so happy. So I just want to say that, because you can't fake that kind of thing. Like, the book is showing people a different perspective. And I think it's a more spiritual perspective of this lens. So the first part of the book is really about where I came from and how I started to see the beliefs. And I use the chakra system to teach people about money in this book, but how our beliefs are showing up based on the behaviors that we see happening for ourselves. So you can self-diagnose, oh, this is a root chakra, this is a crown chakra, this is a heart chakra. Like, it's giving people a diagnostic way to kind of look at money completely differently than they probably ever looked at it. The second part of the book is about going into an 8-step process that people can guide themselves through. So it's like a workbook that if you want to change for the better what's going on, then go through this process. And by the time you're done, you will have a completely different relationship with money. And that's the kind of emails I get from all over the world. It's also been published in India. And it's fascinating that it also just applies the same there as it does here. Like money is money, right? And then the final part of that book, the third part, is about embodiment. Like, now that you've seen that there's a different way of being with money, what does that look like in your life? How can it change the things that are going on that you experience every day with your relationships, with your work, with money, with your self relationship? Like, all of those aspects are dealt with inside the book, which, it's not a quick read. Like, people can read it for a while, but that was why I wrote my new book, because I wanted something easier to like get in and get out. And it's a fictional parable. The Money Catalyst is like it could have been the book before The Mindful Millionaire. Like, if you like this, now you can go in deeper. But that's what I've written.
Oh, how exciting. I didn't realize, and I haven't had a chance. I know you sent me some information to look at, that the first part of your book, the focus has, based on the chakras. That is definitely one of my things. And, it really helps people, I think, visualize something that maybe they can't always wrap their head around. And when I started learning about the chakras, was learning like certain things about myself, like the fact that I didn't have a voice. But when I would check and see if my chakras were in balance, it was my throat that was out every time. Every time it was
wow.
it helped me become really curious. And so, I have friends and I have clients and people who will come to me, and we'll just do a session where I can look and see if they're in balance. And then we can work on how to bring those things in balance. But a lot of it is the curiosity, really asking those deep questions, not just, oh, well, we can get this back in line by doing this meditation or using these crystals or this, aromatherapy or, kind of the more woo-woo stuff, but really doing the work and asking the questions. So now I know I'm going to have to go back and check out your book for sure, because I think that's amazing that that's one of your focuses, and how that can really show people, either where they're stuck,
Yeah.
or what their relationship is to money, in a different sense of just asking questions like, what do you think of this? And how are you with that? And I love it.
Totally. I will say too, on that book, therapists will reach out to me from, again, all over the world. And like, I met one, a friend of a friend, we had lunch here in Sedona recently, and she was like, I'm so excited to meet you. And I was like, okay, why? Like, what's going on? And she's like, not only did I read your book when it first came out, I've been using The Mindful Millionaire. All of my clients are required to read it, and we work on the issues in our therapy sessions, and it's been helping my clients with their relationship with money for all these years. And I was like, I'm not a therapist. And the idea that therapists are using it is also just amazing, because it felt very woo-woo at the time, but it is very much grounded in biology and psychology and sociology. Like, it's all coming together. And I had a therapist when I was writing the book, a PhD level, doctorate in psychotherapy, reading the book, giving me feedback to make sure that it wasn't in conflict. And I guess that's where it probably helped with people using it that way.
That is very fascinating. That makes me even want to read it even more.
It's little known facts. There you go.
No, that's great. And, we're always seeking tools. We're always seeking tools to help our clients, because there's going to be areas that just aren't my specialty. I may be certified as a life coach. I'm certified in everything. So it's love and relationships, money, your career, spirituality, and your health. But there's going to definitely be those outliers that are way beyond my expertise. And I love that's part of the point of my podcast and having people like you on, is when I give somebody a referral to somebody, it's because I know that their expertise is really going to help this person achieve their goals. in a way that I can't help them. And it's not just handing somebody a business card or sending them, texting them a web page to look at. But I can also say, I had this person as a guest on my podcast. Check out her episode, see if you resonate with her, see if it sounds like she's someone that you'd be interested in working with, because I really think she can help you achieve this goal or work through this blockage in a way that's outside of my expertise. And that's how, I think we can continue to help the world be a better place, through collaborations and through sharing each other's strengths and businesses, so that, we're helping the whole person, not just one little piece of their life. And so knowing more about you and how you do what you do, that changes my perspective as far as referring people, because now I see how much more aligned, we are in a lot of things, not just our background in working with money.
Yeah.
And so, I really want to thank you again for agreeing to come on the show and talk about what you do, talk about your books and how you can help people. For those listening who are afraid to even look at their finances, what's one loving, shame-free step that they can take today?
I love this question. I would say just breathe with your numbers. Like, don't try to fix anything yet. You can open your banking app, pull out your statements. Before you even look at the numbers, you can put your hand on your heart and take some deep breaths. Remind yourself that what you're about to see is just information. It's not judgment on who you are as a person. And then you just look at one number and you take that in, right? I think the thing is it's more about gratitude of like, thank you for showing me where things are right now. Like, thank you for me even having this moment to check in, to assess what's going on. But it's really that simple, like no fixing, no planning, no shame spiraling about how you should have done better, just acknowledging. I think that the magic really happens with money when we are like, especially when we have trauma with money, like we treat ourselves almost like a hurt child, like how we would treat a hurt child. Like, you wouldn't shame them, you wouldn't give them a bad time, you would be free of judgment. That's how we want to be with our money. We want to just be loving, compassionate, and like, okay, I'm just going to take this one small step at a time.
Yeah. And learning to give ourselves grace, like you said, just acknowledging it's just a number. It's here to show us something. And just that one skill, if we can just use that for so many areas of our life and stop shaming ourselves, stop living in that guilt, and just accept things that they're there to show us something and be open to what they're there to show us instead of judging ourselves or shaming ourselves. It is so powerful. So thank you for offering that step for people to take. I think it'll have a lot of impact on people who are really just like, I don't even want to open my checkbook. I don't even want to know what my balance is today. Like, it's just too much. It's too heavy. So thank you for offering that. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your heart and your very grounded approach to wealth and mindset. You've made the financial journey not feel so more doable and so full. And for anyone feeling overwhelmed, uncertain, or even intimidated by your next financial chapter, I hope this episode reminds you that the path to peace with money starts within, and also shows you that there are wonderful people like Leisa in this world who are there to walk beside you to show you options to help you change your relationship with money. If you want to learn more about Leisa's work, you can find her at wealthclinic.com. You can pick up her book, The Money Catalyst, and The Mindful Millionaire, wherever you get books. And of course, we know it's at Barnes and Noble, so make sure you take a trip over there. And as always, if this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend, leave us a review, or hit subscribe so you never miss another episode of Happiness on Tap. Leisa, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom and your story.
Thank you.